This is the story of 5 men who are victims of war. They fought the longest war in American history, witnessed America's first military defeat. They all saw heavy combat in Vietnam. Although they were all decorated for heroism, none of them received a hero's welcome. These 5 men are now serving prison terms. None of them had criminal records prior to their military experience. Dwayne Mabee, Private U.S. Marine Corps, awarded the Purple Heart for wounds received in combat. James McAllister, Medic U.S. Army, awarded 3 Bronze Stars for gallantry at Hamburger Hill. Kenneth Patterson, Sergeant U.S. Army, received the Republic of Vietnam Commendation Medal and other decorations. Raymond Baker, Sergeant U.S. Marine Corps, awarded 13 Air Medals, the Vietnam Cross of Gallantry with Palms, and the Purple Heart. Footage you will see in the next hour was culled from the Vietnam War years. Of our 5 men, only this man will be seen as he was in Vietnam. Albert Allen Dobbs, Sergeant U.S. Army, awarded 3 Bronze Stars, 2 for valor, 3 Army Commendation Medals, 2 for valor, the Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, the Purple Heart. According to his presidential citation, Sergeant Dobbs' devotion to duty and personal courage were in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. Dobbs, Albert Allen, 12 years later, also known as Pee Wee or Skip, now serving 7.5 years without parole for attempted armed robbery. Hundreds of thousands of men who saw heavy combat in Vietnam have been arrested since discharge. Their arrest rate is almost twice that of non-veterans of the same age. There are no accurate figures on how many of these men have been incarcerated, but a Veterans Administration study concludes that the greater a vet's exposure to combat, the more likely his chance of being arrested or convicted. This is one legacy of the Vietnam War. In 1965, Vietnam seemed like just another foreign war, but it wasn't. It was different in many ways, and so were those who did the fighting. In World War II, the average age of the combat soldier was 26. In Vietnam, he was 19. Pee Wee Dobbs was 17 when he volunteered for Vietnam.
When I was growing up, where I grew up at, military service was an eventuality. You felt the obligation. My father was in the military, my uncles were in the military. Everyone that I knew who was older had had a military experience.
I'm a soldier, I do my job, always do my best, and the lady rest, hit it.
No, it's funny, I saw this guy one time with this real nice blue uniform on. I was ready for it, and I guess that's what I was looking for, I guess. A way to be recognized. I just fell in love with that glory of wearing that uniform.
I became a medic because I would have the opportunity to express my ability to its fullest, because I felt to believe that I had the capabilities of doing wonders with my hands.
I went in for data processing accounting, and
After a short while in there, they had publicized about airborne. And I wrote home to my girlfriend about that and told her I was going to go into that. And she said, well, you're going to wind up in Vietnam. I didn't think so at the time. And I went down and took my jump training and got my orders 17 days later for Vietnam.
Where I go, everywhere I go, there's a drill sergeant there. There's a drill sergeant there. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go.
When I made the decision to go airborne, it was, I guess, the culmination of 17 years of being littler than everybody. So I just wanted to do something macho, and I saw being a paratrooper as the manifestation of macho. You know, if John Wayne would have been in the Army, he would have been airborne. For the first time in my life, I knew what it was like to be tall, because I was tall, 10 feet at least.
We went by troop carrier, a long, drawn-out process. And we crossed the international date line. We got to Okinawa. We had to stop for, I don't know, supplies or something, refueling, whatever. But, and we had 4 hours liberty in Okinawa, at which time everybody got loaded, naturally. I guess everybody figured that's the last time you're gonna see any booze anyway, so that was it. We dug right into the sauce. I don't remember getting back to the ship. But when I woke up the next morning, it seemed like there was a whole new group of guys on that ship. Everybody was beginning to be aware that there's no more stops.
The pilot announced on the PA system that we were approaching the shores of Vietnam. That's when my heart seemed like it fell to my bottom. And when we landed, and I took my first step out the door of the plane, there were 2 things that hit me: the heat and the smell. A smell that I never had experienced in my life, and the heat that I never experienced.
I was terrified. Everybody was terrified. I mean, we stuck out like sore thumbs. And we were just confused and running into each other, and you hear these war stories bouncing around. None of them are true, but then you believe everything. They had VC that were 12 feet tall. They captured the 25th Infantry with a bag full of rocks, you know. Everybody went after Ho Chi Minh with broken bayonets. These were the baddest dudes I ever saw in my life. I was probably as scared of the guys in the 101st as I was of the Viet Cong. These guys were certified bad. They had on jungle boots that looked like the devil himself had thrown away. They had on fatigues with big gaping holes that had just rotted through, and they just had that look in their eye. They look at you and you know, I've been there. I'm bad, I've been there. I was scared to death.
Good evening. The heaviest fighting of the past 2 weeks continued today, 25 miles northwest of Saigon. Men of the American 25th Infantry Division, joined by men of the 101st Airborne Division, killed at least 147 North Vietnamese regular forces in fighting yesterday and today around Trung Ba. U.S. casualties were 8 dead and 13 wounded in fighting there.
first time I was ever under fire. I'd been in the woods maybe a week. There was a guy beside me, I didn't even know his name, he was from another squad. We caught some fire from the wood line. I got down on one knee. I wasn't really sure what was going on. I turned around to ask this guy what we should do. You know, you train and everything, but when the caps start flying, you get confused. I looked at this guy to ask him what to do. He'd been hit right below his eye. And the side of his face was blown away. He wasn't falling, he was just standing, and he kind of half turned and fell. And I remember somebody screaming at me to get down, and I was just looking at him. The rounds were flying every place.
The first time I saw action was during the Ted offensive. And I went in on an unarmed helicopter. We were going in picking up wounded. And the only armament we had was one machine gun. And when you land right in the middle of the city there's wounded people laying all over the place, and you realize they're shooting at you and you don't have anything to shoot back with. And it'll scare the hell out of you. And it doesn't hit you right off that people are out there trying to kill you until you start picking these guys up. You got holes in them all over the place, and they're bleeding all over you.
How'd you feel the first time you saw that?
Scared.
Unlike Vietnam, World War II saw America unite behind her fighting men. The two wars were just as different on the front lines as they were back home. During World War II, the 6th Marine Regiment served 4 years in the Pacific, but only engaged the enemy for about 6 weeks. In Vietnam, the combat soldier typically served a 12-month tour of duty, but was exposed to hostile fire almost every day of his tour.
Sergeant Dobbs was a small feller in stature, but a great big man. I even remember the brigade commander knew who Pee Wee was because of his actions and what Pee Wee did. And I had the fortunate opportunity to put a medal on Pee Wee for his bravery and for his actions up in our corps, out in the Ashow Valley, in the vicinity of Ashow Valley, during my tenure as battalion commander.
If he didn't have to talk on the radio and call in artillery, then he threw hand grenades, or Pee Wee fired his rifle, or Pee Wee gave first aid. Pee Wee rescued wounded men. I felt that if I was going to survive, I was going to survive because Pee Wee was there and Pee Wee was on the job, and I heard 110%. Well, Pee Wee always gave 210%. Pee Wee was worth 5 men.
I guess about 4 or 5 of us just stayed real tight. Rick was a radio telephone operator for a while. He got off a point, was an RTO for a while, and I had to be close to radio because I was calling in artillery, so we were kind of always together on positions. And that was good, because if you had to be in a combat zone and you had to turn your life over to somebody for a few hours while you got some sleep, there was nobody better to turn it over to than Rick.
We were all pretty much like a family, you know. I mean, it's like, it's about the same way you feel about the people that live on the same block you do in the city, you know. The only way I can say it is you know, take a guy that lives on a block in any city in the United States, And for 6 months, one of his neighbors gets killed every day, or a couple out of a week or something like that, you know. And how would he feel about that, you know, knowing that he might be the one coming up next? So.
In Saigon, a U.S. military spokesman said today more than 700 enemy troops were killed last week in that sensitive border area. Throughout all of South Vietnam, the enemy lost a total of 2,689 soldiers. American losses, however, were the highest in more than 2 months. 228 U.S. troops were killed in action.
His name was Acevedo. Well, by this time, me and Ace, I guess we'd, got to know each other's, what each other's going to be doing, at all times. So we've pretty much stuck together, tried to maintain a low profile, I guess. Well, we was on this listening post. It was nothing new to us. We've been on listening posts several times, together and with other people. Listening posts were beginning to be routine and all that, so. And on these listening posts, when you got two men in there, one guy naturally stays awake and the other guy gets a little shut-eye. Well, I was getting a little shut-eye, and Ace woke me up. He said, there's something out there. He turned around, and he was hit with 5 rounds from the chest right up to the top of his head. And the guy was still coming. He was coming after me. Acevedo was already dead. I was next. I didn't give him that chance. So I killed him. I emptied a full magazine into him. 20 rounds, M14. Then I stabbed him.
That night, hell broke loose. We reached the base of that Hamburger Hill and started hearing on the radio. We got 3 KIAs. We got 4 KIAs. What the hell is happening? Then they called back, they said they had 2 medics killed. I told the commander, I said, I got to go now. It's time for me to go. He said, no, you can't go. Your commander, send your medic. Send somebody else up. I said, I got to go now. I called back to the 3rd platoon. I said, Murphy, you ready to go? He said, yeah, I'm ready. For some damn reason, I don't know what it was that... You don't realize the danger that you're getting ready to get into, but you realize an obligation that you had. We ran for about a half a mile in these mountains. Just me, him, and 2 other men to help us, to protect us. When we got to the mountain, you seen bodies laying all over the place. I asked him where my medic's at. And one dude said, you're laying in that poncho there. Took a direct hit, an RPG round to the head. And when I opened that laundry sack, that poncho, I seen a body that I thought I knew. I didn't see no head. The head was completely blown off. transpired then, I received a few Bronze Stars. But a medal can't pay me for what I experienced.
That's probably the part of Vietnam that's, I suppose, never goes away from anybody. You see just the death. You see a lot of destruction. You see a lot of villages being burned, and you know people are being killed, and you shoot into bushes and you hear screams and you know that people have been hit. But to see someone get hit with a high-velocity steel jacket round designed by people to kill other people, that's the most degrading experience that a human being can undergo. There is no more obscene way to die than to be shot to death in a war.
This is Roger. If I come up to where you are, I'll be going at him in the same direction. I want to try to flank him. That's why I'm asking you what direction you're firing, and it sounds to me like you're firing east, so what direction are you firing?
I can't remember whether it was 1 or 2 days after A Company 2nd Platoon got wiped out.
Come on, run it fast. Do the man.
We were in an area on top of a mountain. It was pouring rain. We were lost. Officers were conferring over their maps.
That's what they're trying to overrun his list. Negative. Don't fire anyway. What's the matter?
All of us had been hurt real bad. We'd lost a lot of men. Particularly when 17 men in one platoon were killed and all the wounded were slaughtered. And there was a family. And we had them surrounded, and they were terrified. And these people knew they were going to die. Pee-wee walked up with an M16 and a full magazine, and he emptied it right into this family. And he was screaming the entire time he did it. And he said, "You knew it, you knew it, you knew it, you knew what was going to happen to us, you knew what was going to happen." And he lit them up, and he turned them into jellyfish. And these officers looked over their shoulders like he had just dropped a 2x4 off the back of a pickup truck on a job site. And I just stood there and watched.
I shot a family of people. Human beings, not for what they did, but because they happened to be in the area where something was done, where 17 of my friends have been slaughtered. Saw them. And I walked up to them. And I shot them. All of them. Because they were there. Because I thought that they knew about a VC ambush that those 17 people had walked in. And because I thought that they didn't have a right to live when those people die. And because I thought But somehow I had the right to make that decision. Now I see those people just as clearly every night as I did on that day. And they're just as real as I am or as anyone else is. And they watch me at night. If I'm 1,000 years old, I'll never forget that day. And I'll never forget those faces. And now when it rains, I can smell death.
After World War II, the men came home together in troop ships. They had weeks to shake off the stress of war. The Vietnam vet generally returned alone on a commercial jet, often less than 48 hours after jungle combat. Perhaps the most dramatic difference between World War II and Vietnam was coming home.
Now he returns with all his experiences in the fight to kill fascism. Now he returns. He has earned a welcome to outlast the joyous whistles and the paper streamers. We welcome him to our hearts, so that once again he becomes part of us.
The closer we got to the States, the more you can envision the World War II welcome. Bands waiting for you on the runway, you know. Chest starts swelling up. I remember it was real bright that day, real bright. You just couldn't ask for a better day for coming home, you know. So the plane comes up and stops. You get ready, take your time. And the first thing, like when I first got to that door, you know, it was, where the hell is everybody? You know, turn around and look at the next guy and says, you know, where the hell we at?
Well, when I came back, we didn't really know what to expect. I mean, we figured, you know, it was going to be big parties and stuff like that, you know. I mean, people were going to be welcoming us home. But it wasn't that way. And they landed us at San Francisco and turned us loose there. And I guess there was about 12 of us hit the airport at the same time, getting ready. We were going our different ways, going home. And when people see us coming through the airport, they'd move around, walk around us, so they wouldn't have to get too close. And I got to thinking maybe we all smell bad or something.
And I got back to the States, and supposedly a normal society, but yet to find there's a war still going on. War because of my race, because of my color. I just went over there and fought for this place, you know. I had a white friend that fought right side of me. He never mentioned, you can't eat from this here because it's mine. And you're black, I'm white. Because we had from the same dish, drink from the same cup, slept in the same bed, slept side by side. But to come back and see it the way it was, and the way it seemed like it still is, turned my whole conception, and I began to hate. hate it and hate it.
We came back to the States. You came back to the same address. Mom looked the same. Apple pie tastes just as good. But it wasn't home. I just couldn't handle all the unreality. It seemed like I had just come from the most real place in the world. Maybe the only real place in the world where things were measured in terms of lives and deaths.
I think the thing that I noticed most about Skip when he came back was how reckless he was. He bought a motorcycle. It seemed like every other day I was going out someplace to haul a motorcycle and him back in, or going to the hospital to pick him up. It took him a few months to settle down from this living on the brink. And then he tried to work and go to college and fit into society and be a good family man, which he did for quite some time.
We were married in February 1970, and we had all the adjustment difficulties that everybody has. I don't think they were any greater. And then the demons started to creep in. I had a period where I had nightmares every night. Now, one nightmare I was a dream that we had ambushed a rice cache. It was a dream that was pretty familiar, and it was an event that had happened. And somehow in the middle of the dream, I reached out and touched her, and I started to choke her. And I woke up, I suppose, just before I choked her to death. And then I began to fear myself.
And that's when I first come home. I hit my wife in the eye. I was laying on the couch sleeping. And I was dreaming about that. Snakes dangling over the opening, trying to get out. And she decided to wake me up with a kiss over the end of the couch. And she kissed me, and I hit her in the head, and I didn't realize it. And after that, I was put on sleeping pills.
I was in my mother's house, and the guy lived in an apartment upstairs, was moving furniture or something. But he dropped a chair or something, I don't know what it was, but it sounded just like a mortar hitting a tube. And once you hear that sound, you never forget it. Well, there was another guy there at the house with us. He just got back, and he was in the Army. Well, when the guy dropped that chair, we both headed for the door. But when we got to the door, we realized, it can't be anything, because we're sitting in a house in South Texas. But everybody else in the room was laughing about it. But to us, it wasn't funny.
Anti-war student groups staged a variety of protests throughout the nation today, sparked by the renewed U.S. bombing of North Vietnam. A few arrests were reported, some 95 who blocked the gates at Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts, and 10 persons who refused police orders at California's Stanford University. We have a series of reports. First, Greg Jackson at Columbia University.
The young people marched off the campus and headed downtown.
There was no comparison to a man coming home from combat from Vietnam and a man coming home from World War II. People came home from Vietnam, and they were not looked up and respected. So he comes home in 13 months and is told that you're a fool for going to Vietnam and serving your country. And obviously that mindset may affect his judgment.
You get called every name in the book, but the one that you're expecting. So I guess it's kind of obvious that rejection, I guess, causes some kind of a reaction that will again try to get you accepted. I guess right then and there is when I dove into the damn bottle. I've been there ever since.
if they were going to send us into a war like that, then they should have been ready to back us up all the way. It would be like me sending my kids down the street to beat up a couple of other guys and not be ready to back them up if the old man comes out and gets ready to kick their butt. I got to be there to back them up if I'm going to send them down there to do it. The United States did not do that. I still believe that they sent us over there and let us get killed and did not do anything to stop it. They didn't do anything to help us. Day in and day out, there was guys getting killed when we could have put a stop to it, and they never did.
And then we came back and we were different, and everybody wants to know, God, what happened to those guys over there? Gee, I saw them marching around a parade ground. They all looked so nice and clean cut, and they all had smiles. And then you come back and you're not smiling anymore. We did what we had to do. And people wanted us to be ashamed of what it made us. You're 18 years old and you're wearing somebody's brains around on your shirt because they got their head blown off right next to you. And that's not supposed to affect you. I can never understand that. What would scare me is if we were to send a group of 18-year-olds 12,000 miles away and subject them to a year of that obscenity and have them not be affected. That's what would frighten me.
With the release of the last American prisoners by North Vietnam today, the final contingent of U.S. troops in South Vietnam boarded planes and flew out of Saigon. The American commander, General Requiem, spoke at the departure ceremony, covered by ABC's Charles Burt.
You can hold your heads high for having been a part of this selfless effort and for the peace with honor that has been achieved.
According to a Veterans Administration study, half of the Vietnam combat veterans suffer from what psychiatrists call post-traumatic stress disorder. Many vets complain of alienation, rage, or guilt. Some succumb to suicidal thoughts. 8 to 10 years after coming home, almost 800,000 men are still fighting the Vietnam War.
Several times Skip sort of came to pieces in front of me and would open up and talk a lot. I suppose one of the first times was right after my daughter was killed, and I was so upset, and he was upset for me, and he started to break down. He broke down because of my daughter's death. What he poured out was about the war, how he felt about death, how he felt about the children in Nam being killed. These were things that he had never talked about. Perhaps part of his responsibility in the children dying in Nam.
I was very worried about Alan. Like on a rainy day, like it was in Vietnam a lot of times, I was afraid he might do something to himself, to be truthful. He would get so depressed. I was afraid he might try to take his own life sometimes. Because he wouldn't talk to us. He kept everything bottled up inside of himself. And when he did explode, he just hit the wall and with his fists and stuff like that.
I was doing a lot of speed. I was drinking all the time. And I wanted the whole world to just leave me alone. I had my mind made up that there was nothing else left to lose. That there wasn't any other way to go but just down. And that nobody was going to miss you anyway. I went home one night and the decision was to kill myself with a gun, which I suppose was fitting.
I came home one night and he had a suicide note pinned to his bedroom door. And he had a loaded shotgun in there. And I didn't quite know how to handle it, so I went in and I took the shotgun and I says, you're going to have to use something a little less noisy because I'm going to bed now. And an hour or so later, he came into my room and he sat down next to my bed and he says, thank you. And that's all he said. He got up and he went back to bed and he slept the rest of the night as far as I know.
I've done a few stupid things that should have resulted in me getting killed. And that's what happened in Morgan City. I pulled a gun on a guy who was apt to blow my brains out. And when he didn't, the whole thing, the experiment just didn't work. So there I was with a gun in my hand. He was not inclined to shoot me. So I just threw the gun down. And the police came. And I got 7.5 years. It seemed somehow like it was some kind of equation. How many human lives equals a human life? How many of your buddies equals one Vietnamese? You get so used to just killing people. At the time, it was so easy. You know, emotions run real high. Then you stop viewing those people as people. You're Americans, they're gooks. That wraps it. And then after that all takes place, and you find that all people are people. All mothers have sons. That all people have dreams. And you stop and think about the sons and those dreams that aren't going to be anymore. Not just the people that you killed, but the lives that you killed. And that does it for your own.
I'd have to tell Ace that at times I wish I was there with him. Be glad he didn't have to go through this.
Maybe. Dwayne G. Second-degree assault. 2 to 6 years.
Why? What did we do it for? What was our reasons? Was it worth it? Was it worth you going, stretching your life out there, putting your life on a limb like this? Was it worth me going out there, getting shot at, getting wounded, to try to save another man's life? What did we do it for? There was no reasons. I don't see any. But I wish I could see them.
McAllister, James. Aggravated rape. Life. No parole.
I consented to do this interview and hoping that they'll keep us the hell out of Central America. And if they don't, if they want to go ahead and go down there, let the guys that made the money off the last war go down there first and give us a chance to make it this time. They're sitting up Washington or wherever with their big money. And there's a lot of people made money off that war. There ain't no way it went 12, 15 years and somebody didn't make some money. So let the guys that made money off that one go down and fight this one, and we'll stay back here this time, and we'll sell the stuff to them. We'll send them the guns and the ammunition that they need. And we'll sit back and make the money off of it. And let them watch their friends die this time.
Baker, Raymond, forcible rape, 40 years, no parole.
I mean, there's got to be something wrong somewhere. And the government's got to face this. And they got to do something about it instead of trying to cover up and pretend it don't exist. Guys that were over there that died, and they're saying, all right, it was a good game. You just walk back now, everything's fine. Everything's not fine no more. It's not fine. You got guys, they don't even know where the f they are. They don't know where they've been. They have no idea where they've been for 5, 10 years now. They're unsociable. They don't get along with people. They can't, their divorce rate for veterans is astronomical. It's not that maybe they don't love their families. It's that they can't even get close to them.
Patterson, Kenneth A. Second-degree attempted murder, robbery, 10 to 25 years.
And if anybody who wasn't there, if they can see this and learn just a little bit, that just because you had the Vietnam experience doesn't mean that you can never have other experiences, like to love somebody, to care about your fellow man, to be concerned about the state of the human race, then that'll make it worthwhile. All we want to do is come home. That's all.